All right, welcome in, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is the Just Us Youth Talk Show, Season 3, Episode 1. Today we have our lovely Lauren Griffin interviewing the lovely Ion Bell. And we're looking forward to having a wonderful conversation. As always, if anybody has any questions that they want to ask the speaker, please just get those in the chat, and then we will respond to those in our Q&A segment. But other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren.
Hi, guys. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Like Jules stated, we have Ion Bell on for today. Just a little bit about him before we dive into what we're going to be talking about today. He is an author, a poet, and a youth mentor. He's affiliated with the organization Monument of Deliverance Outreach Ministries Incorporated. He is a 20-year survivor of the justice system. First felony was sentenced to 13 years at age 22, but broke the cycle in 2017 and currently been off paper and free going 21 and a half years. Founder of the Man Time Outreach Group. He is a youth pastor, an ex-addict. He is a living and breathing miracle by the grace of God, the very essence of what our show is about. And he can help others turn it around as well, and has helped others turn it around as well. He has 2 books out now, multiple spoken word videos, a true inspiration. So please help me in welcoming Ion Bell.
Good morning, Mr. Bell. So glad to have you with us today.
Can you hear?
Are you able to hear? Ion? Sounds like he might not be able to hear.
Oh no.
Hold on.
Okay.
Ayan, are you able to hear? 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Hello.
I think he's checking his
Okay.
I'm working
sound.
on helping fix the problem too.
In the interim, Lauren, let's give a little overview about what you're going to be discussing today. What's the core issues?
Yes. So we're going to be talking about the legal rights of juveniles today. We will be exploring that within the criminal justice system, shedding light on the unique challenges and protections afforded to young individuals through an expert analysis such as Mr. Ion Bell, who has lived experience and discussed his own personal narrative within the system. We will also be navigating the complex landscape of juvenile rights and the importance of upholding fairness, dignity, and due process for youth involved in legal proceedings. Um, some of our topics will include his first experience with the juvenile system, the role of legal representation in his case, misconceptions of young people have about their rights, common violence of juvenile rights, lack of education on legal rights for youth, and plenty more when we get, to it.
Great. That's great. I'm looking forward to that. And I know that Karen's going to be able to add a lot to that on the back end with some additional commentary because she's had a lot of experience, a special experience with youth, children in particular. And her heart and passion are for those children who have experienced some level of trauma, which we know oftentimes is layered with some contact with the justice system.
Yeah,
So this is going to be quite an interesting conversation.
excited.
Mr. Bell, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I'm listening. Can you hear me?
Oh, perfect. All right.
Okay, yeah, we can hear him. Okay, cool. So I think we'll start. Unless, Mr. Bella, Ion, do you have anything do you want to say before we jump into questions?
No, ma'am. Let's go.
Okay, awesome. Sounds great. Okay, so I'll start with my first question. Number one, Ion, your story is incredibly powerful from surviving 20 years in the justice system to becoming a youth pastor and a community leader. Can you take us back to your first experience with the juvenile justice system and how did it shape your perspective on the rights of young people in the system at the time?
Sure. I was not born here in Missouri. I
Okay.
was actually born in Cairo, Illinois, but my family moved around a lot. But through my preteen years, I lived in North Memphis, Tennessee, um,
Okay.
during the crack era. Okay. I want to get like 91 through 93. I was there. I attended school there, and my first felony experience actually came when I moved to Missouri, because I thought I could do the same things I was doing in Memphis and
Mm,
come to Missouri to the boot hill and do the same thing. Which
mm,
of course, that wasn't happening. And me and my cousin, we were stealing cars. We had learned the trade. He was from Milwaukee, I was from Memphis, and we was just two city boys that came to the country, and we thought that we had it going on, and had all the sense, and we began stealing cars. And about 2 months into stealing these cars, we were joyriding. And I was in class one day. I was in the 8th grade, and the chief of police at that time, named Barry McKay of Haytime, Missouri, came to the school and he questioned me. They pulled me out of class. He questioned me, but before he questioned me, he said, "Your cousin has already told me everything, so don't lie to
wow.
me." During this time, they did not contact my parents. They did not. They had totally alleviated the fact that I had parents. I was in the 8th grade. They came and questioned me like I was an adult, pulled me out of class, and of course, I was at a point where I could do nothing but admit, because they look for a confession, and they're
Right.
like, your cousin already told, so you might as well tell you. And so I came forth and I said what I said, and we end up um, being actually as juveniles convicted of auto theft. Um, but we were not sent away at this time. We were given a PO. Her name was I'm not gonna say her name. We was given a young lady who was a juvenile advocate.
Mm-hmm.
But she was a white lady, and she was one of them scared straight. Like you had to meet with her every month, and she would tell you, how bad you're doing. And then at that time, early '90s, we had slits in our eyebrows, and we had parts and all these things going on. And she would say, "No, you're cutting your eyebrows. You like rats been nibbling on it." And I mean, she was just trying to scare you into doing the right thing. That was my first actual encounter with the because we had an officer that actually sat and checked off cars that had been vandalized, tampered with, or stolen within the last couple of years, and asked me and my cousin were we responsible for these, and we ended up getting some probation. My parents ended up paying for it, but that was my very first, where I was actually charged as a juvenile with the crime.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. And just to like speak a little bit on like, did it shake your perspective at the time of what that looks like?
Oh, most definitely, because here I was a juvenile. I knew I had did wrong, but the interrogation process,
Right.
and the lack of, I wasn't read any rights. I wasn't
Right.
told you have a right to remain silent. My mother and my father was not there. So I know that these things happen behind closed doors with our young people.
Yeah.
It's you got three young men riding the car. You separate all of them, and you tell one of them that the other one told on the other one now, without contacting parents. Sometimes parents not in the home, or they're not able to be contacted, and that's on us. But when it comes to the department, they tend to take advantage of the fact that a child, okay, we don't have any parents, so we're going to exploit that. Tell them
Right.
whatever they want to hear. You're a good guy. We don't want to see you go to prison. Let me help you. What happened? And right then and there is when we should request a lawyer. But we're not giving those educated on that. And I wasn't educated. My dad wasn't not in the streets. I had one of them fathers. He worked every day. He had two pair of shoes. Both of them were work shoes. And
Yeah.
so he was not in the streets. Um, so when it came time for me to take accountability for these things, I was told that, like, well, your daddy not going to come. He's at work, and the sometimes law enforcement plays on the fact that we lack certain things in our community, and they take advantage. So this mother that's crack addicted is not going to go to the phone for her son, for them to interview them on a homicide
Right.
or burglary. So what we're going to do? We're just going to trick him into telling us what we want, what we need. And that was my first experience.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, number one. Um, and as someone who has like lived through the system and now gets the chance to help others, what do you think young people today really do misunderstand about their legal rights? Because I know you spoke a lot on things that were happening that were clearly unjust, clearly racially motivated. So m- what do you think are some misunderstandings now that young people are still not dealing with?
Um, One of the major misunderstanding is the connection between law enforcement and the community.
Mm-hmm.
As I become, as I've gotten wiser in my age, there should be a healthier connection between the community and our young people. And so we have these SRO police officers monitoring our schools, which is good. But sometimes the only time they engage the youth is when the youth is wrong. You have to engage the youth every day. Whether you like it or not, you have to speak. My church is right down the street from the school, and we engage students twice a week. I engage them every day, but twice a week we feed stack lunches to these students, and you can see the demeanor on their faces of how their days went in school.
Yeah.
But there's no connection. When we first started doing after school snacks, we would have fights. We're a block. When you cross the street from the school, the church is right there.
Right.
So we were feeding kids one day, and their fight broke out. I held everybody back because everybody, parents, they want to go break it up. My mother, she ain't got no business out there, but she's like, kids. I'm like, no, give it a second, because it's an officer right there watching the
Yeah.
same thing that we're watching.
Yeah.
But the officer couldn't interact with the kids because on school campus. When the fight started to get out of hand, they had no problem with pulling units up and drawing weapons.
Of course.
So that's why I had, that's one of the things is, okay, these are the same students that your SRO officer been around all day.
Right.
He should be able to pull up and say, hey, stop. But that wasn't the case. He at that time, I don't know who it was, but they were just worried about who was fighting so they could lock them up.
Right.
I mean, I had fights in school. I'm sure some of y'all may have squabbles in school. You know, why is it such an extreme? You know, you go straight from being a suspension or anything because the school don't have anything to do it, but we want to give you a juvenile referral. And that right there hurts us as young men, because that stigma sticks with us not only in society but also in our own communities.
Right.
And everybody's seeing what happened. Everybody's seeing you get arrested, and so from that point on, you know, you kind of become a stigma in the community, and that's pretty much all people expect from you.
Yeah.
So we have to have that collaboration with the community as a whole, and that goes for it's everybody. It's the parents, it's the school, it's the justice system, the law enforcement. Everybody has to come together because these kids go through different walks of life, you know, as they walk. And so that would be the biggest, what I see right there.
And also, like, I guess even talking about the contrast between like white schools who definitely have fights as well and are doing some crazy stuff in their establishment and don't get the same type of treatment.
Exactly. And we're having situations where our school system, there's been fights, brawls at basketball games, and it got to the point where only person that could come to a basketball game to be immediate of the young man or woman who's actually playing in that game.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're at that point now to where the school is just zero tolerance. And it's kind of sad because a lot of people that's having these altercations, they're not in the school system. They just come into the games. And so right now we just got back to where we have a tournament and everybody can go. But there was a time about 2 weeks ago where nobody, unless you was immediate parent of that student, could come and watch a basketball game.
Wow. That's wow. Okay. And going into our next question, what are, like, I guess this is kind of segueing right in. What are some of the most common ways juvenile rights are violated during legal proceedings?
Oh man, interrogation is huge. I believe interrogation should be live streamed in front of a judge. Because you got to take, depending on what the crime is, you have young men that's shocked. Okay, first thing you got shocked, and then you have the will to want to do the right thing. Okay, and I believe the police are giving a lot of space to deceive, to say, okay, well, we didn't notify the parents because of this. Well, you know, or this, and they question our young people, and they question them with intimidation.
Right.
You know, at a certain age, you don't know if a police is approaching you, and depending on how you approach you, he can scare you.
Right.
They're just, you know, saying some things that you don't even know you know what you're saying. Instead of him asking you, is it cold outside? He might say, did you wear a coat today? You know, and our young people, if you're, I feel like if you don't have the consent to say that you can have sex, you don't have the consent to be answering officers' questions. Okay, I mean that's the same age group, but yet if something happening, and we, the justice system has been like, okay, well, we need this information to get to the bottom of the crime, and that's understandable. But in the process of that process, there is really no care for the young man or lady who's being accused of this crime. You know, we need a conviction. We need to know what happened. We need a confession so we can have a conviction, and then we'll go from there. And after the conviction, these kids go somewhere and the system loses them. And that's the sad thing, is they get lost in the system, and you know, and they get home and they're like, why they are not rehabilitated? Well, some of us have not been rehabilitated. And so therefore you know, you really put a block, and you stunt the growth of young people when that happens, because once you enter any type of facility, whether juvenile is adult, there is no emotional nurturing. Emotional nurturing has been proven to be an essential need for the human being. You know, they say food, shelter, and this and that, but nurturing, emotional nurturing is key. And when we lock our young men and women up, they're not getting emotional nurturing in there. And if they are getting it, it's in the wrong way, and it's not going to last. And then we release them back to the community, and they're angry.
Yeah. And that reminds me of that. I don't even know if you've seen that story about the Central Park Five when they see us. And
That's
yeah, how
yes,
their
yes.
interviews were coerced, and then they literally showed those same interviews in the
Yeah, in the
for the
courtroom.
in the courtroom,
Mm-hmm.
which is wild. But
It
like
is. It
how
is.
easily that has happened, and one of those kids was literally just in there with his friend. But yeah,
You just,
just
man,
there.
and that's happening to our young people. Is things have happened in our world to where there's no compassion for the young person. We just pull up and we'll confront them only when they're wrong.
Yeah,
And I believe that you have to engage these children when they're doing good, when they're doing bad. I run into numerous young men. They might have been suspended. They might not be on the basketball team. I can't do nothing about that.
yeah,
But I try to let them know that we can go going forth. Let's see what happened. Maybe if that's an experience that you don't like, I can show you how to change it. And that's what they have to know is today in today's society. We have to just be conscious of what we're dealing with as far as our young people, because there's nobody. I'm 46.
hmm,
I had what you might call OGs on the street. You know what I mean? I had
right,
people that would pull my coattail and say, "Hey, that's why I say it's a community thing. Um, hey, you ain't doing this right, or why you not in school?"
right,
Um, I would have numerous guys ask me when I was skipping class. They'd be like, "Why you in this school?" I'm like, "Man, I'm good. I'm graduating." No, you're not gonna graduate skipping school. You need to get back to the school. And once
right,
one or two or three people have told me that, I'm going back to the school, because you know what? I'm unwelcome out here. You know what I mean? I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And I think that's why I say community, man, is big in this issue, because our children, we can tell them what we want to at home. We can explain things to them, but they're going to go through layers of society that could possibly influence their thinking. They have to go to school. They might, you don't want to keep your kids cooped up in the house all day. So, you might let them go to the store. You might let them go here. And then they're on social media. So it's not what they see, is what they see and how it's broken down and received. Like, I know that my son or my daughter may see certain things on social media. I'll go to them and I'll talk to them and get an understanding about what they just seen. And so that's big. That's another big, huge issue, is that we as parents and society in our community, we have really no way of monitoring the information that our children get. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and that's huge. But growing up, we didn't have phones.
right,
You just had word of mouth and things of that nature. And I guess this where we're at is, if there's nobody on Front Street in on one, everything is done through social media now. And sometimes our children, they need that one-on-one, up close, personal, in your face um,
absolutely.
type of monitor, most definitely.
And I feel like I already know the answer to this question a little bit, but in your
Uh-huh.
own in your own opinion, are young people given enough education about their legal rights
But
before they
they
become
are
involved?
not. They
Right.
are not. One of my biggest when I was incarcerated, I would see these videos of these young men getting murdered or getting
Yeah.
shot by police officers at traffic stops. And I had offended that way. I called my robbery. I took the police on a high speed chase. I done all that, and just the grace of God allowed me to live through it. And as a police officer hurt, I was charged with him being hurt, as far
Hmm.
in the robbery as well. My first
Hmm.
time down.
Hmm.
But I seen that situation right there as I did some things that I had to take accountability for.
Yeah.
And so when I was seeing these traffic stops, I would see how young men would behave. The police is telling you, yeah, you might have a gun and you're going for it. He's telling you, don't draw that weapon. Stop. You know what I mean? And here, we have a young man or a young lady, and they don't have respect for the police. They're like, man, look, I'm going to go under here and get my gun, and they get gunned down.
Yeah.
Each time is a little bit of everybody's fault, but just being real, I watched these videos. So around that time, I was employed by the ACLU of Missouri School to Prison Pipeline. And one of the things that we introduced as a motto is a new driver initiative. Because when
Hmm.
your 15-year-old goes to get their permit, there's nothing in the book that tells them how to behave during a traffic stop.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a question in writing that says, how do you behave if you get pulled over by a police officer?
Right.
So that's miseducation right there, because okay, we got all these kids that want to drive and we want them to be able to drive. We want to make them responsible, but who is telling our children how to behave? Okay. I got a 10-year-old. He gets at 5 years. I let him get his permit. He's driving. He got two of his buddies in the back seat. They're riding around and they get pulled over by an officer. Officer might be having a bad day. Or they just don't know how to act. They don't know how to behave during a traffic stop. So that's to me, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's what one of the miseducations in our community, because we have this thing to where the police is the enemy, and police, and so therefore that has boiled down to disrespect. And we all know that respect is earned.
Right.
If you want to be respected, you have to respect. And these officers, as I say, as I got older, I had an officer when I went fed. The officer that was in pursuit of me could have shot me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say his name because me and him, we work together. We talk all the time. Anytime he pull young men over, he always bring me up, because when I got out of prison, he was the first person I seen, and I hugged him and I thanked him, because he was properly trained and he could have killed me, and that would have been that. Okay, because I was in the wrong. But through his training, and me changing, I seen, man, that man saved my life. And then we have to get in the community with the police officers that are doing their jobs, acknowledge them. And I know nobody wants to be seen as, and it's not about being a snitch. It's about being responsible and securing your community, especially when it comes to our men. We have children that's going this, but it's up to us as men to secure our community. Wherever I live, wherever I am, everybody in the neighborhood know who I am. I know who everybody in that neighborhood is. It's not about being a snitch. It's about, because I have children in this community. I need to know who the sex offenders are. I need to know what's going on over here. And that's one thing that I've learned through my parents. My mother, she was nosy. Okay. She was nosy. Wherever I was, she snatched me out of cars. There are people in the city that'll tell you I didn't have to be afraid of the police. I needed to be afraid of Miss Kathy Bell when I was growing up, because she would snatch me out of cars, literally. And that's where we at. We have to have, that accountability for our own sake and for our children.
I was gonna speak on the imagery and like the videos that you were talking about, and I know that's so prevalent within our generation.
Yes.
You see all of that, and I know the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement, the George Floyd thing, people were acting like, oh my God, Black people are getting shot by police, like it hasn't been happening for years.
Right.
But
And it has been happening. And the thing is, it's just fun. It's amazing that you brought that up, because in one of my clips, I made a hoodie, and on that hoodie, I wrote the name of every Black male that I could fit on that hoodie that had been murdered or shot at a routine traffic stop. And it blew my mind, because I was like looking at these videos and I'm looking at myself in this video, without the proper home training. Some things that school didn't have to do, or the police didn't have to do. I learned at home. But I'm looking at these young men, and these police are giving them orders. They're giving them commands, and these young men are like, who are you? You're the enemy, and you can't tell me nothing. And they don't be knowing the severity, and then the shots get fired, and I just can't look anymore. So that woke me up while I was serving federal time, and I was on my way home, and I was just like, if I'm gonna make a difference somewhere, I can make it here, because I was in that same position. And I misbehaved like the other young men did, but my life was spared because of the officer who was in pursuit of me.
Right.
I just got for his training, and whenever I see him, man, I just shake his hand. Sometimes he'll pull me over just to chat with me. You know what I mean? Because I'm not doing anything anymore. I don't get mad. What you pull me over for? I'm like, man, what's going on? And he'll say, yeah, I pulled some young men over the other night, man, and I mentioned your name. He said, man, I let them know, that, you might be mad at me now from what's going on, but man, hey, if this guy right here, he'll tell you that I'm a good guy. So, I mean, that right there connects. And I think that's what we need more of.
That's so refreshing to hear, and different than what like our generation is saying right now about the
Yes.
police. It's a very like, we don't mess with the police because of what
Mm-hmm.
happened. And you can't even really like blame them in a sense because they're
Mm-mm.
clearly having an emotional reaction, not even an
Mm-hmm.
emotional reaction, a reaction period to what's
Right. But
going
this is true.
outside.
But one of the things that we have to understand is as we grow older is the goal of a traffic stop is for everybody to make it home safe. Think about it.
Right,
Police pull you over. First thing you want to do is get home. You want to get
right,
home safe. If they're gonna write you a ticket, let them give it to you. But you don't want to be harassed. Same thing with this officer. He want to make it home to his family. He don't want to have to walk up to a car. You got people in the car moving, doing all kind of different movements that's going to put his life in jeopardy. He wants to. So the goal of a traffic stop should always be everybody want to make it home safe. Okay.
right.
Officer pulled me over. Okay, he get up to the car. Let's be cordial with one another. All right. Whatever I did wrong, tell me what I did wrong. Write me a citation, and then we leave. But what happens is we have all this extra conversation doing
Yeah,
traffic stop. You know what I mean? Oh, why you pull me over? Now, in certain situations, if you're an adult, that's okay. Question that. But when you're a young man or a young lady who's just learning to drive, I would hope that you would have enough respect for yourself, and what your mama and your parents taught you to be cordial, to know that it's better to comply with the police during this time than to buck, because buck is going to get you, it's going to make things worse. And they need to learn that it's a goal for everybody. And if all of us have that in our mind when we get pulled over by the police, there'll be a whole lot less violence during traffic stops. Because you know what? I'm gonna do the best that I can to get home to my kids, and that officer gonna do the best that he can to get home to his. But he got a job to do. And so that's where we at with that right there. And I be promoting that in the community. And you have those, man, I'm teaching my kids to be cool with the police. No, it's not teaching them to be cool, it's to respect.
mm-hmm.
Um, and to if they want respect, that's the only way that you're going to earn it. You have to give it, and you don't have to like somebody to respect them.
Yeah, because at that point it's less about like what the police is trying to get out of you. You literally just trying to get home,
You're just trying to
and I
get
think
home.
it's less about
Exactly.
what you're saying and more about I want to live through this, especially for
Mm-hmm.
Black and brown kids and especially for Black and brown boys.
Yes.
So
Compromise, because we as young black men, black males, period, we can't afford to overreact like others do.
yeah, facts.
I see on TV you might have a white person that behaved the same way that this black person act, but the officer's not that intimidated
Yeah,
by this. But he's intimidated by this young black man that got dreads in his head.
right.
It's same situation, different outcomes. Sometimes because of how we are viewed, and that comes back to officer training. Some humanistic, to know you're going to be an officer. You got to treat everybody kindly, of course, unbiased. But we know that that's not the case.
They already
Right, they're already guilty.
right.
It just seems what we can find to make stick, and so we have to be conscious of that.
Right.
All right,
Okay.
Lauren, we come up on our commercial break,
Okay.
10:30. And on the backside, Karen has a question that she wants to pose around education and youth. So
Okay.
after our commercial break, join us back here for the continued conversation with Mr. Ion Bell and our interviewer, Lauren Griffin.
Introducing Next Generation Media Internship Program, designed for undergraduates, postgraduates, unemployed, dislocated workers, and WIOA participants. Our program offers remote virtual work experiences, qualifying as approved individualized career services. Learn while leading at your own pace, with part-time or full-time hours per week. Benefit from weekly debriefings and group supervision, along with our 15-minute masterclasses. Our projects include the Justice Beat Talk Show and the Just Us Youth Talk Show.
Mr. Bell, I wanted to ask a question based on your work in the community. I was just wondering, where do you see an opportunity for there to be education for young people about their juvenile rights? Where do you see there being an opportunity to actually do that? We talk about often that our youth don't know their rights, but where in your work have you found an opportunity to be maybe create a seminar, discussion, or a talk where we can educate not just the youth but their families about their rights.
Can you repeat one time?
Sure, sure. I'm just wondering, like in your work, because one of the challenges, I'll say this real quickly. I was looking around and found some information on the Department of Justice website, Civil Rights Division, and it talked about in St. Louis County, Missouri, they had obtained a comprehensive agreement addressing inadequate access to counsel, improper plea, and probable cause hearings, all these kind of things that they began to address increasing the number of youth offenders. But overall, it does seem like when our youth, in your example, got pulled out of the classroom, seems like our youth are unaware of the fact that they don't have to speak. They don't have to
Right.
incriminate themselves. So I'm wondering, where do you see opportunity in the community to educate the youth and the families? So should that happen to another young person in this current climate and decade, our children would know they don't have to speak without representation, that they can refuse to speak, because it seems like our youth still don't know that they have that basic right to not incriminate themselves.
Mhm. Indeed, and I think part of it is wanting to be grown, but you're still a juvenile. And sometimes they will get confronted by certain individuals, enforcement, whoever, and they want to be grown. So they don't tell the police how they, well, I'm this, that, and the other, and you ain't gonna do nothing to me because this, that, and the other. And like I say, it really goes back to the respect that we had to have for one another. And then, I can speak from my own experience, the only way that I got hip to my own, I had to make the mistakes, and that's it is not. And I hate that because there are other children of other minorities who they taught this at home. You know what I mean? There's certain things that, like driving, nobody told me how to behave during the traffic stop. My dad told me when I went and got my license, like, well, son, what you gonna do if the police get behind you? And we had kind of like a role play thing where he let me know it, and he let me go on about, man, why you pull me over? And because he played the disgruntled cop. You know what I mean? The cop that you hand your license, your registration to, and he's still looking in your car, and he played that role with me and let me know that, hey, no, this is not what you do during the sun. This is what he tell him to call me. If you're underage, you need to call your parents. A lot of times, police don't want you to call your parents because that's going to mess up their investigation, or they already know that your parents are going to tell you to be quiet. That's why most adults, when they arrest a lawyer, the police are upset because they didn't get that confession that they needed, and they know that once you lawyer up, you're on camera, then you lawyer it up. It needs to be put in the schools. I believe that we're able to put sex education and these things in school. We ought to put something in school that says know your rights, know the law. The ACLU has been big and huge in my community, promoting a lot of seminars and things like that we've tried to educate this community on everything from school board rights to getting pulled over in your car. And we have to have that in our community available because most time people don't even worry about a traffic stop until their child gets pulled over, until maybe they get pulled over and mistreated. But we want to have that in our community available is huge. And I'm glad that you came here because we have things in place now to where if you're not sure about how this went, we have somebody for you to contact. We have a way for you to file a complaint, and we have material and literature for you. And if you can't read or write, we have somebody in place that could help you with that. And so educating our community is huge. And I think we have to get that into our school system, especially now with some of the things that are going on in school. I know a young man with the Special Schools Act that they got going on. He has not been totally innocent of a crime or totally excluded, but until he can't go back to school. And so he's just in the neighborhood now. And so, but that's one of my biggest things. We have to get there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I definitely agree with the know your rights and having that as some kind of educational process in the school system. Thank you for elaborating.
No problem.
Hey. um, so going back into my next question, I wanted to know, this is a good segue. So many people assume juvenile records disappear at 18, but that's not always the case. How was having a record affected your life?
Oh, wow. Um, okay, the juvenile, I was 15, going on 15 when I acquired this case with my cousin stealing cars. Now, years later, in 2000, I was convicted, or I was going to court on a robbery and a high speed chase. And I accepted a plea bargain of 15 years, Class B felony, 15 years. I was just told by my lawyer that I would probably do half, and I would be home. And so I took that plea bargain, went to court, went to sentencing the judge, knowing that it was my first time down, but really couldn't have too much leeway. He gave me 13 years instead of the 15. Um, when I was given that, I didn't know what that really meant. Was that, I'm going away. I had spent a year in a county jail awaiting just to try to get, not trying to fight the case, but just throwing myself at the mercy of the court, hoping that I would get a sentence that wouldn't be too lengthy. But it was during this time that I noticed, in those conditions, are the easiest ways to persuade and convince somebody. If I was spending 6 months in the county jail, it ain't got no. My parents brought a box fan there, so in the summertime I got ate by mosquitoes. In the wintertime I froze. So when they came to talk about 30 years, no, I didn't want no 30 years. But as time went by, 20 started sounding good, 15 sounding good. Things started better because of the conditions that I was put in to kind of influence my thinking. And
Right.
some of the public defenders would even play upon it. Oh, like, okay, I know you're getting tired of being in here, so what do you say we go to court and you accept this in exchange for this? And that's one of the things that and it's happening. It happens to this day. But for me personally, that's one of the things that I recognized it early, but there was nothing that I could do about it, because I had committed crime. I knew that I had to be for it, but my rights was something that was never explained to me. Never.
Mm-hmm.
During this whole process, I never had nobody come in and say, well, Mr. Bell, you have a right to this, you have a right to that, you have a right to this. No, during this period, this is how it needed to be. What happened with this? I was questioned and I was treated as an adult, and I was treated as I had all this knowledge, but I wasn't even in consent enough to really, say I want to drink. But they accepted the information that I gave them, and so to me that was huge when I look back, because nobody educated me on my rights. My dad, like I said, he wasn't in the streets. My mother was in the streets. They don't have any felonies. They wasn't raised, Indian. So I got most of my information from the streets, and I thought that that I was just a bad person and this is what I deserve. However, as I got older, and I've been sometimes when you look back as you get older, you will become even more traumatized because you're like, wow, that wasn't supposed to happen to me, or that wasn't right, and so to me, that's one of the biggest things is we have to educate our kids and educate everybody, is the parents. The ACLU, we found that it's not the kids that don't know their rights, it's the parents. And the parents be seen in a situation where they can advocate for their child, but they don't know how. And so, education is key.
Yeah. Okay. Also, if you could change one law or policy in the juvenile justice system, what would it be and why?
One law, I guess I would make it the interrogation, the process of interrogation dealing with a juvenile. Take your own child, for instance. You got a 7-year-old. When you approach your child, you don't hammer them. But if you want to know something, you have a way of finding out without being. But it's after the fact that you found these things out that you process with the child, and that's what we lack today. Our children don't get processed.
Yeah.
They see things. They get treated certain ways. Like community shootings, safe in shootings. We have a shooting. It's 4 or 5 kids outside. Everybody's so worried about who was shooting everything, but you got these 4 or 5 kids who've been witnessing these shootings, but nobody has went to them and said, "Hey, You know what happened out here today? What do you think happened? You know what I mean? And ask their opinions so they have an understanding. You know, not be too churches, but you know, all you get, you're supposed to get an understanding. And sometimes we think that our kids are they're informed correctly, and they don't be. And you know, I
Yeah.
went through that with my own children to where they had a thought or a belief that something was supposed to be a certain way, or they say what they wanted to say, and you know, freedom of speech and all of that. But I was like, no, you can't say what you want to say. There is accountability behind everything that you say. Don't let society
Right.
get you to a point where you think you can say anything, because that's what's happening. You know, say whatever you want to say, do whatever you want to do how you feel. But nobody's talking about the consequences that come behind. That's what I would change. I would change how they interrogate our children. Our young men, they're catching cases by record numbers, homicides. They have situations out in the streets, kind of like what led to my situation when I ended up going fed, is I had some gun violence as an adult. And it was because I'm in the streets, and I felt like had to do what I had to do. So there had to be something in between there, and me making a decision to keep me from making it. I didn't have any brothers, and this is the reason for my man time is I have any brothers. I just had two younger sisters, and I was the oldest. Had to take care of them. So when it came to some things in my community that I wasn't conscious of, my daddy wasn't in the street, so I went, you know, to those that were in the streets, and I end up developing an image, and that I had to uphold, and some things happened in the streets. But the way that I was interrogated, and I was talking to my dad about this, who's a bishop. Yes, I said, Pop, you remember when I got arrested for that movie? I said, man, they never contacted you. He said, no, all I remember is they went to the school, they got you and your cousin, and they told both of y'all the same story. He told on you, you might as well go and tell on him. And at the end of the day, when me and him met up, we like, man, why you tell? Oh man, they said you said everything. So
Right.
but they never contacted my parents. So I think the process of dealing with juveniles, they be shocked, they be scared. We have to take all those things and especially with minorities, because we don't see that happen. We've seen white kids shoot whole schools up and walk out of there with cuffs on. We've
Right.
had two young men get into it, and it's a firearm involved, and both of them get killed. I
Right.
mean, and so it makes me wonder: is it about education, or is it the stigma of that we have on us today? And so that's one thing I would change, is how that conversation goes during interrogation behind closed doors.
And I think that's so important to know, because I think our generation and the social media of it all, I think tells us that we can say anything and we can do
Yes.
anything. We have
No.
our rights and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, and you could tell by, the person that's up front right now within the government, the system is still the system.
The
And
system is still the
brown and
system.
black
Right.
people,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to be offered the same,
Mm-mm.
opportunities that white kids would get when they get
And
pulled over.
And
Yeah.
I explain it to my young men all the time. I got my oldest. He likes to wear shade, and lately I've been
Yeah.
on because he'll wear the shades would be too dark, and he want to wear them inside buildings. And I had to explain to him like, and he told me, he's like, well, Dad, you know, such and such wears Ray-Bans, white boy.
Right.
Yeah, but you're different. Um, and it's sad, but you can't overreact if somebody tell you to take your shades off. You're gonna look suspicious if you walk into here with dark shades on. And can't nobody see your eyes. He's not gonna look suspicious. So what you have to
Right.
do, something, be responsible for yourself, keep yourself safe. And I'm gonna get you some shades that you can wear in the building, and people can still see your eyes. But there's something about just, and he's like, he's thinking to himself like, why is it such a big deal? And
Right.
this is life-saving information that I'm trying to give my son, because you can walk in the building with them glasses on, somebody tell you to take them off, and you've been wearing them so long, like, and here you have altercation because you look suspicious, because you young black male and you 6'3" and 16 years old. So therefore, we have to do, and it's sad, we have to do certain things as a minority to protect ourselves and our children today, and we just have to do those things.
And segueing right from that, from your work with the Man Time Outreach Group, what have you learned, and what policies do you think are more urgent that need to be taught with our youth today?
Mm. The main one of the things that I learned with our youth is when I was growing up, I wasn't. so much my own person. Yeah, I was me, but I know that I had somebody to answer to.
Right.
Our children today, they are who they are. They feel like this is who I am. My status says this. Social media. Um, One thing I had to help my mother to was, there would be young men come through the line, and one of them might try to steal a bag, and she would be, what are you doing? And I told her you have to be conscious how you address the youth these days.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, you could walk up on me and my partners, and if it was your mama and she said this what it was. But now you can't do that with the youngsters, because depending on who's around, when you confront them, they might want to buck back. And I've had instances where I've had to tell my mother, like, no, just let it go, because this young man is around his friends. You're not going to get the response that you used to get when you used to confront me like that. And so today we have to be conscious that a lot of these kids have come into their own at certain ages. And if you want to tell somebody something, or you it might not be good to confront them around everybody, because now you put them on the spot and they got a reputation to protect. They got a status that they need to protect, and you're not going to get the response that I've had it with my man time. I asked some young men, I know they stole some bags. When I pulled up on them, they started running. And I let it go for about a week, and I see them at a football game. Just so happened the principal standing there right there next to me. And I said, hey, and they try to keep on walking. And I tell the principal, like, what's going on? I didn't tell them. I told them, they stole some bags and they threw the trash on the ground. That's what it was. They took the bags and they just threw it on the ground. They burnt out. And so he told them to come back. And when they all came back, they had their head down, and we was able to work with them. But I let them know as soon as they pulled, I said, man, if y'all don't stop what y'all doing, y'all all going to prison. All four of y'all, because they're kind of like the popular guys. Everybody wants to do it because they can do what they want to do. They don't have supervision at home. So, they're cool cats. They done been to the parties. They're where the grown people go. However, but this particular day, they had to come around and they had to bow it, and just accept the fact that they had. That's all I wanted them to do, was just, admit that y'all was wrong. However, if the police would have been called on them, that situation would have been 10 times different. Like I said, it starts in our community, and that's huge for me.
Yeah. So speaking of that, what is one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you were younger? And what are pieces of advice that you give your kids now?
I probably wish, because I was warned a lot, but I just wish that I would have been more applied what was given to me as a young person.
Yeah.
I was growing up during the crack era, and my mother, my dad, like, there was nothing that happened to me that I wasn't forewarned. But I wanted to be grown. And I'm a writer. I do a lot of spoken word, and one of the things that I feed to the young people is don't be in a rush to get grown. That'll come, because being grown comes with its own issues. And sometimes when we strive to be grown, we start doing grown people things, and we're not mentally or physically capable of really carrying on those things. And that's the advice that I would give to the young people. Don't be in a rush to go. Don't be in a rush to do what adults or what you think would make you an adult, because those things come with responsibilities. Enjoy your childhood, and soup come in a can, not me. Never let nobody soup you up. Think for yourself. And I've seen that on both sides. I've seen that. I've seen that in prison. I went to a few drug treatment we call behavior modification programs in the state of Missouri. And where they focus on not what you did, but the thought that led to what you did. It's called behavior modification. So just little different acronyms like STAR, stop, think, act, reflect. Before you start making decisions, stop. Think about what you're finna do. Then you act, then you reflect on the action that you did. That's what I do with some of my Sunday school youth and some of my man time guys. I just try to keep them conscious of the decisions that they're making on a regular basis, and how it's going to affect them. I just voted. I'm 46 years old. I just voted this year for a presidential election because I caught a felony back then.
Wow.
So I ain't had the opportunity to vote for nobody. I've just been a felon who just been spinning my wheels. But up until last year, I was registered to vote and registered to do a few. I started doing and applying for things that I wouldn't normally apply for, because I had that felony, and it excludes you out of so many things in life. And that's another thing that I want the young people to know is once you catch that first felony case, man, it's hard. Once you get grabbed by the justice system, I could have been out of prison, but once I was snatched up, it's recidivism is back and forth, back and forth. Prison becomes an open door. You begin to do life on installment plans. And so we have to be to educate our kids on that, man. And I'm just so happy that we're able to get some information out there because our thinking process with the young today is huge. And the last but not least is the masculinity within the community we want to maintain because, we want to water everything down, and of course I could go on and on about that part, but we have young men and women in our community who we don't have that boldness as young men. Or here it is, we made a child, so we don't step up to the plate because the masculinity honored anymore. Everything's this sexual, that sexual, but the man that's the modern man today that was supposed to be is not where we are, and we're not training our children. We're not training our young men to take care of families. We're not training our young men to be accountable for their actions. Our young men are playing video games while the women go work now. So I mean, to instill the back masculinity within our community with the young, because this was going to start out with our young men. It's key to me. Like that's something that we don't want to get away from, and that's something that I try to keep with my man time guys. Is I try to keep them on a man realistic level. Man first, you're a man first. You worship God, then you have family, and then it goes on. But today we don't have that, and so to be able to not only promote that but walk that before the young men is huge. Somebody got to walk it. We can tell them what to do all day, but if they don't ever see another man, a black man that's doing what he's supposed to do, or not in the joke game, and not, then they're gonna think that what you're telling them is fiction. Like, who does that? What black man don't got to hustle? What black man don't sell drugs? Well, we got a young man right here, and he's gonna walk it for you. And so I had somebody to walk it for me, and I just pray that somebody walk it for these young people.
Ayan, do you mind giving us some information about your Man Time program?
Sure. My Man Time group, I took out a few things. I started about 3 years ago when I got to prison. It was because I had seen those videos, men getting gunned down doing these traffic stops, and so through collaboration with my church, Monument of Deliverance, and my dad, with Bishop Bell, I came up with Man Time. Man Time, I coined the term in federal prison. They'll ask you when you get there, what type of time are you on? Crip time, blood time, this time, that time. But the only way to really do anything for yourself, you had to be on Man Time. And so if you was on Man Time, that means that you didn't depend on no gangs, you didn't depend on no organizations. In fact, you were alone. But there could be danger, of course, because this was in cars. They say in gangs, everybody's grouped up. But here it is, you go into a building and you're on Man Time because you don't want to be a part of anything, because you're not rocking with those gangs. If something was to happen to you, they're not going to rock with you. But my last time in prison, I went to my book, which I'll be publishing this year. But the only way I could write this book was I had to get on Man Time, because I was an ex-gang member and I was on GD time at that time, and I had to do whatever the GDs was doing that day. If they got up at 5 o'clock that morning doing push-ups on the yard, I got to get up and get with them. If they got this going on, if they gonna, whatever they was doing, I had to do whatever they were doing. But when I went back to prison for the last time, I retired. I disconnected from the gang and I got on Man Time. And I was able to actually complete some works that I had begun earlier when I was incarcerated. But being on Man Time allowed me to be my own man, which means I had to learn how to behave. I couldn't act crazy, around the prison, not with the staff, not with anybody, because I didn't have a shot caller. I was basically accountable for my own actions. And that's what really we are when we get back to the streets. We on Man Time. No matter who gang you in, no matter what you're doing while you're in there, when you return to the streets, it's all about you. You're going to be alone. And so I had to give up some things, and I called it Man Time. And so that's why I try to instill to the young people. Part of Man Time is being respectful to people. You don't have to like people to respect them. I have different concepts, and there are many of them come from me being incarcerated. Like being aware of your surroundings at all times, little tips such as that nature. But that was the man time, and I've had a lot of people that's been donating and they're sowing seed into my program. Summertime we do flag football. We do and anytime they see me, like I always have refreshments for them. We got a basketball tournament that we do right here by the church. I got a basketball goal that I roll out. Have 2-on-2, 3-on-3. I do hot dogs, hamburgers, and haircuts. I'm a barber by trade. So I get my little guys together. I cut their hair on the way out the door. They get a hot dog, hamburger, bag of chips. But while they're getting their haircut, I talk with them. It's called a chop and a chat. You know, how you doing in school? I just, try to tap into their lives and see what they need. I got a couple young men. They got 3.8 grade averages. I got some athletes, you know what I mean? I cut their hair and I just make sure they have those things that they may not have because they don't have a father at home, and I had a dad and I got a dad and I know what that means. So I just try to extend that same to our young men who they might have a powerful mother at home. And a lot of them do. They got great mothers. And, they'll tell me, yeah, whatever you need to do, my son, they would give me consent. They ride with me. I take them things. But they know that it takes a man to raise a man when they get to a certain age. And so having my dad that he's always been there for me, I wanted to provide the same thing to some of the young men in my community. I'm strategic in those that I shoot at or try to get because everybody don't need man time. Some of our young men have structure already. Some of our young men have IEPs, things that I'm not all the way thorough in, and so I had to be conscious of those that I take in. But I have things for the community all the time. You don't have to be a part of man time to enjoy some of the benefits. If I do hot dogs, hamburgers, and haircuts, it's usually open to the public. It's no charge for any of you want to donate something, that's fine. But I make sure that I target my man time guys, let them know I'm here for them. I sponsor them. We as a church, we try to sponsor a young man and a young lady for their 4 years in high school, whatever they need. I got one of my guys, he needs a suit. We're going to take him, go get him tailored, because he did something in Beta Club. In April, he's going on a trip. And so those are things that, we just wanted to help our children with. And that's what man time's about, man, is manning our young men up and letting them know that they have somebody they can come talk to, because a lot of men, they need to vent. A lot of us, we angry because we ain't got nothing off our chest. We ain't talked about how we mad because daddy not home. We ain't talked about how we get treated at home because we just ain't felt comfortable expressing those things. Emotional is something that I promote amongst because we come home from prison, come home from some of these things that we've been in, and we don't feel anymore. And you get home and you can't hug your kids anymore because you're just emotionally unavailable. And so I try to get my the young men as well as the children to understand it's okay for a young man to cry. Okay, it's okay that this hurt you. It's okay to talk about it and say that this young lady that you were seeing broke your heart. But we live in a society today where young lady break your heart, then it's F this. So I want to extend that, and because that has helped me to build my personal relationships back up since I've been free. When I was incarcerated and in and out, I didn't care about nobody but myself. It was a selfish thing because I didn't want to feel those emotions that come along with being a man but those are things that we need our young men to understand, that it's okay to feel these ways, and that's the only way that you can really be emotionally available with your family.
That's awesome. As our last question while we wrap up, where can people find your books and how can people support you with Man Time and the other endeavors that you got going on?
Oh man, you can catch me. You can email me at BELLIYAUN5 I'm just getting up and started on some new things for the summer and the spring. You can donate there. You can just get in touch with me. Figure out how you want to get in with the Man Time right now. As a church, we're building, we're expanding. So I'm gonna be doing a lot. I have a bicycle club coming called the Boot Hill Bandits this summer, where we're going to try to provide bicycles for our young men and women. And toward the end of the summer, at night, we want to have what we call the night ride, where my vision have maybe 200-300 bikes on bicycles, kids at night with a with the escort, okay, from the city hall down to Hayti Heights, which is from the top to the bottom. So that's what's one of the goals that I just want to keep engaged in the community. So if you want to get behind that, BELLIYAUN, the number 5 at Gmail. And I can tell you about the book that should be toward the end of the year, all the way published, but it will be starting to be published next month. I'm happy about that, and I'll be sharing that as well.
Repeat that again. Your contact email.
My contact email is B as in boy, BELLIYAUN, the number 5 at Gmail.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was lovely to have you.
Yes.
And we are winding down for the day. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Bell, we appreciate it.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Stay with us.
Sorry, Miss Elaine, can you do that one more time?
I apologize. Go ahead and run. I was letting Ayan to stay with us, please.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Justice Beat. If you like what you heard and found the information useful, then support the Justice Beat radio show by spreading the word and telling a friend.